Please welcome Gina Pollara.
Good morning. I'm honored to be the president of the Municipal Art Society. I want to thank our chairman, Fred Eisman, and the dedicated members of the board of MAS for their staunch commitment to MAS and the principles we uphold. I want to say hello to our board member, Janet Ross, and I believe I saw Michael Donovan somewhere out there, so thank you for coming today. I also want to thank the New Museum for generously allowing us to use this beautiful space today. And I'd like to thank our sponsor, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, for their support today. As you know, this year the summit was offered as a benefit of membership, and I'm so pleased to see the room filled with MAS members and friends. So whether you're joining us today as a new member or a renewed member or somebody who's been with us for a long time, we are so happy to have your support and, more important, your commitment to our city. That is absolutely critical to all of our success. So I want to thank you again for your continued support and involvement. So this is my first summit as president of MAS. And we've chosen today to focus on a single topic, public assets. That subject really unifies everything that we do and everything that we fight for. So what do we mean by public assets? Well, we think of them as all of those individual elements of the city that we consider to be collectively ours. So whether they're city-owned or city-funded or city-regulated, we own them. There are parks, there are open spaces, our public transportation networks, our landmark buildings, our civic spaces, all those components that make up what we consider to be the public realm. And all of those things that should be open and accessible to all of us. So public assets aren't just physical amenities like bike paths. They're intangible resources as well, like light and air. So when we talk about public assets, we're talking about the whole lot, all the built and unbuilt that make up the rich fabric of our shared environment. So how we treat our public assets is now more important than ever. We know that more people live in urban areas than ever before. So currently, 50% of the world's population lives in urban centers. New York City's population has already surpassed what was projected for the year 2020. And not only do we house 8.5 million people and counting, but we've hosted close to 60 million tourists this year. So that's more than 1 million people per week. So the trend of people flocking to urban centers is projected to continue, and it's assumed that 75% of the world's population will live in urban areas by 2050. So think about that. That's 34 years from now. It seems like a long time, but when you think about what has to be planned and designed and built and financed, it's actually not a long time, and means we need to get started yesterday. So as one of our former presidents of MAS said, George McEnany, we've got to build a city for 50 or 100 years ahead. And he said that in 1910. So today, we're going to look at how we quantify and qualify our public assets, how we ensure they exist in the first place, how we can maintain them in the future, and how we can balance all the differing competing needs. So we've got some great thinkers that are going to be with us here today, and I'm looking forward to some really lively and informative discussions. But before we move on to the program, I want to make a few important announcements. In preparation for today, we've done some valuable research to help inform and support our work on public assets. We're releasing a new report and online tool today called Public Assets, City-Owned and Leased Properties. And I want to take this moment to thank publicly my very dedicated staff for the countless hours and hard work that they put into this. It's really an extraordinary body of work. So public assets reveals that the city of New York owns or leases over 14,000 properties across all 5 boroughs. That totals about 43,000 acres. That's a land mass approximately the size of Brooklyn. So it's almost a 6th borough. So this report makes readily available a range of information about city properties, like how they're used, the city agencies that are responsible for managing them, whether they're committed for sale or lease, and the applicable environmental zoning and land use regulations. So this is some of what we've learned through our work. They're underutilized. They're located in low-density, low-income areas. They're close to public transportation. They're historic. But most importantly, these properties provide significant opportunities for redevelopment. In all, 22% of these properties don't have a current use. That's a lot of opportunity to make really good use of our public assets. So we envision the release of this report and online tool as a first step in a collaborative process to improve our shared resources and contribute to a healthier, more dynamic, and inclusive New York City. Public assets are the foundation of our civic life. They are one of the ways in which we as a society express our values. The quality of our public realm is a reflection of how we value ourselves and our citizenry. So it can communicate respect or lack of it. When we're forced to endure the kind of claustrophobic and uninspired space we suffer at Penn Station, for instance, we feel denigrated, diminished, and debased by the experience. So at the very heart of the MAS mission is the unshakable conviction that a well-designed, built environment plays a fundamental role in a dignified and healthy civic life. So every generation of New Yorkers has faced the challenge of living in an environment that is constantly changing. And we're not opposed to change. New York has reinvented itself many times over, and that is part of what drew so many of us here. But we want a city that's not just functional, but sustainable. A city that celebrates our diversity, that balances the needs of all of us, that's thoughtfully and comprehensively planned, and that's beautiful and inspiring. And that takes work, hard work, and perseverance. And MAS has been at this work for close to 125 years. So we'll celebrate our 125th anniversary in 2018. And in advance of that milestone, I'm announcing today the Bill of Civic Rights for all New Yorkers. Rights to our public assets to which we are all entitled. And we consider the following 4 fundamental civic rights the foundation of the new MAS advocacy agenda. So as we move toward our anniversary in 2018, we'll be rolling out a series of legislative and planning initiatives aligned with each of these 4 rights. So our first right, we have the right to vibrant, diverse, and stable neighborhoods. We call upon the city to properly care for our designated landmarks and historic districts. We're pushing for reforms that promote and protect local retail and mom and pop shops. We want communities to be meaningfully included in the planning that affects their neighborhoods, and we will fight for accountability to ensure that community benefits are kept, benefit agreements are kept, and that those amenities are delivered as promised. Number 2, the right to accessible, equitable, and inspiring public space. We're going to continue to fight for investment in the creation and maintenance of green space, open space, and streetscapes that make our city more livable for everybody. We're going to continue to advocate for legislation to create compliance, accountability, and enforcement of our privately owned public spaces. Number 3, the right to efficient, future-focused infrastructure. We need to be able to sustainably support the city's projected population increase, which means we need to upgrade our vast array of public services to support and sustain that growth. So in addition to good roads and generous sidewalks and streets that function as true arteries, we need a full-scale overhaul of Penn Station and the surrounding area in West Midtown. We want it transformed into a welcoming, modern destination that meets the mobility needs of our growing region and is worthy of our great city. We're committed to working with all those involved to help devise a comprehensive solution for Penn Station that addresses its real problems. And finally, the right to light and air. We insist on meaningful zoning reform and comprehensive planning to ensure that the built environment yields to our right to enjoy city vistas, the sun, and the sky. Our first initiative is a renewed call for an immediate moratorium on super tall and out of scale towers until new legislation is in place. Exactly. Until new legislation is in place that mandates public notice of air rights transfers and zoning lot mergers. And until we can study where these super talls should go, if anywhere. So we are looking forward to your support in this effort. It's going to take the voices of all of us to convince our elected officials that we all have a say in the city skyline. So as we come to the close of a year-long celebration marking Jane Jacobs' 100th birthday, I want to recall what she wrote in her seminal work, The Death and Life of American Cities. She said, "Cities have the capacity of providing something for everybody, only because and only when they are created by everybody." Which brings me to my final point. MAS has had one great advantage throughout its history: the support of the people of New York. We are a member-supported and mission-driven organization. We are here on your behalf, but the work we do requires your participation. We've been called the civic conscience of the city because we fight to create a more livable city for all New Yorkers across all 5 boroughs. After all, the most important public asset we have is the public, you. So thank you very much